to the Medical Terminology Podcast on iTunes U at JCCC. This episode is Chapter 2, Part 1, Cytology and Histology. A major concept that I'd like you to get from Chapter 2 is illustrated on pages 38 to 39 in your textbook, if you'd like to go ahead and look at that. This concept is the building blocks of the human body. If you look at figure 2.12 on the bottom of page 39, it shows how the human body is organized. At the smallest level, we have the cell, and the study of cells is known as cytology. The combining form for cell is cyto, C-Y-T/O, and the suffix ology means the specialty of or the study of, so cytology is the study of cells. Now cells combine together to create tissues, and that's what they're illustrating in the second picture in that line in figure 212. Now the study of tissues is called histology, Histology, and again the combining form for tissue is histo, Hist/O. Tissues form organs, and the next picture is a lung. Organs perform particular functions in the body. From organs we go up to body systems. In the drawing they're showing the lungs combined with the trachea and the bronchial tubes, and this forms part of, but not all of, the respiratory system. Now the study of the structures of the body is called anatomy, A-N-A-T-O-M-Y. Anatomy is the study of the structures of the body. Finally, all of these different organ systems work together to complete the human body itself. And there are many processes that occur within and between the different organs and body systems. And we call the study of the processes or the function of the organs and body systems physiology, P-H-Y-S-I-O-L-O-G-Y. Okay, now we're going to review a little bit. I'm going to say a definition to you, and then you need to come up with the proper term, and as you're doing this, it'd be a good idea to either write down the spelling or spell it aloud to yourself, because again, spelling is going to count. Here we go. What is the term for the study of cells? Well, that's cytology, C-Y-T-O-L-O-G-Y. What is the term for the study of the structures of the human body? That's anatomy, A-N-A-T-O-M-Y. What is the term for the study of tissues? That's histology, H-I-S-T-O-L-O-G-Y. And what is the term for the study of the function of parts of the human body? That's physiology, P-H-Y-S-I-O-L-O-G-Y. Now, what is the term for the smallest building block of the human body? Well, I hope you remembered that that's the cell. What term do we use to describe a combination of organs that are all working together for a particular purpose? Well, that's a body system. Now we're going to look at cytology in a little more detail. And what does cytology mean? It's the study of cells, or more precisely the study of the formation, structure, and function of cells. Now, under cytology, there are a few terms that are confusing for people, and they tend to miss them on tests. So I'm going to hit those high points here. I'm not going to go over every single thing in the section on cytology. Again, it's up to you to study it, but I am going to review a few things with you and quiz you. The first thing is the major parts of the cells. The cell is composed of three major parts: the cell membrane, which is the outer covering; the cytoplasm, which is a material that's within the cell membrane but is not part of the nucleus; and finally you have the nucleus. And the nucleus is the control center of the cell. It controls all the activities of the cell, and it also helps the cell divide. Now, within the nucleus there are some other parts, and the main part we're going to talk about is the chromosomes. The chromosomes are strands of material that is called DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and this is the primary genetic material of all cellular organisms. And each chromosome has on it many genes, and each gene carries a hereditary trait such as hair, skin, eye color from a parent to a child. The study of genes and how genes are transferred from parents to their children is called genetics. Genetics. Now, this term is commonly confused with another term which is not in our book, and that term is genealogy. Genealogy. Now, genealogy is the study of the history of a family. Genealogy is looking at who were your mom and dad, who was their mom and dad, which would be your grandparents, who were their parents, how do all the aunts, uncles, and cousins fit together. It's the history of your family, and that's what you're doing when you're doing genealogy. That's not genetics. Genetics is simply the study of how genes are transferred from parents to their children. So please don't confuse those terms. Another important term is the genome, Genome, and you may have heard of the Human Genome Project, which has been an attempt to map all of the genes that are found on all of the chromosomes in human beings. Well, a genome is an entire set of genes that are derived from one parent. Sometimes genes can be defective, and these defective genes can cause what are called genetic disorders. GENETIC These are disorders that someone gets because they have a faulty gene that they received from one or both of their parents. And in our textbook there's a list of quite a few genetic disorders, and you should become familiar with these, what the terms are and what their characteristics are. And finally, a congenital disorder is an abnormal condition that exists at the time of birth. It is not caused by bad genes or defective genes. Rather, it's caused because of something that happens prior to birth or during birth. And there are three types of congenital disorders. First of all, there's a developmental disorder. This means that something went wrong during the development of the fetus. For example, a limb may not have developed properly, or an extra toe may have grown and is present at the time of birth. An anomaly, anomaly, is a very general term that just means that there's some deviation from what is normal. So we have a deviation from what is normal, an anomaly, at the time of birth, and it is usually some type of malformation, and we call that a developmental disorder. Another type of congenital disorder may occur because of prenatal influences, that is, the mother's health and the care she receives before birth. A common example you may hear about is fetal alcohol syndrome. This is a syndrome that affects babies if their moms have been drinking alcohol while they were pregnant. Finally, we have birth injuries, and these are things that happen during the process of birth that cause some type of disorder. Good example of this would be cerebral palsy, which is caused by something happening that reduces the supply of oxygen to the brain during birth. If there's an inadequate supply of oxygen to the brain, part of it dies, and the child is going to show some types of neuromuscular disorders because of the brain injury. And again, this is something that happens right at the time of birth. So those are our three types of congenital disorders, abnormal conditions that exist at the time of birth. This is different from the genetic disorders, which are caused by defective genes. Okay, well now we're going to do some practice with these terms. First of all, what is the term for the outer covering of a cell? That's a cell membrane. C-E-L-L-M-E-M-B-R-A-N-E. What is the term for the control center of a cell? It controls the activities of the cell and helps it divide. That's a nucleus. N-U-C-L-E-U-S. And what is the material that is within the cell membrane but it's not part of the nucleus? That's cytoplasm. C-Y-T-O-P-L-A-S-M. What is the term for the study of how genes are transferred from parents to their children? Well, I hope you said genetics. G-E-N-E-T-I-C-S. What is the term for the chemical that is the primary genetic material of all cellular organisms? That's DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. And what is a gene? Well, the gene is the functional unit of heredity. A single gene can control specific physical traits, or it could be responsible for some type of genetic disorder. And finally, what is the term that we use for an entire set of genes that are derived from one parent? That's a genome. G-E-N-O-M-E. What is a congenital disorder? That's an abnormal condition that exists at the time of birth. It's spelled C-O-N-G-E-N-I-T-A-L-D-I-S-O-R-D-E-R. What is a genetic disorder? A genetic disorder is a disease or condition caused by a defective gene. Now we're going to review some of the genetic disorders. I hope that you've studied these. I'm going to give you a description and you need to come up with the term. And also, during the pause, please see if you can spell it. Which genetic disorder is a group of genetic diseases that are characterized by progressive weakness of muscle fibers? That's muscular dystrophy. M-U-S-C-U-L-A-R, dystrophy, D-Y-S-T-R-O-P-H-Y. What is the term for a group of hereditary bleeding disorders in which one of the factors needed to clot blood is missing? Well, that's hemophilia. H-E-M-O-P-H-I-L-I-A. What is the term for a genetic disorder that affects the respiratory system and the digestive system? That's cystic fibrosis. C-Y-S-T-I-C-F-I-B-R-O-S-I-S. Which disease is passed on from parents, but the symptoms only appear in midlife and cause irreversible and progressive loss of muscle control and mental disability. That's Huntington's disease. Huntington, which hereditary disease is caused by a missing enzyme in the brain that causes progressive physical degeneration, mental retardation, and an early death. That's Tay-Sachs disease. Tay-Sachs. And finally, what is the term for a genetic disorder in which one is missing an essential digestive enzyme, and if it's not detected and treated, it can cause severe mental retardation? That's a hard one to say and spell. Phenylketonuria. Phenyl, P-H-E-N-Y-L, keto, K-E-T-O, nuria, N-U-R-I-A. And if you've ever read the package of a food product that's containing aspartame, otherwise known as NutraSweet, you may have noticed there's a warning to people who have phenylketonuria. Those folks are missing an enzyme that they need to actually break down some of the aspartame, and so aspartame can be dangerous for them. Okay, so we've had a good introduction here to Chapter 2. We've covered the part on cytology, and in the next episode we'll be looking at histology. So this ends this episode of the Medical Terminology Podcast.